Do I even need to give an intro, or... well, yeah, I guess I should. Hello guys, welcome to the Yang trailer analysis. Today we're gonna analyze the Yang trailer, obviously. I promise I'm not doing my Uncle Crow voice, I just am sick, got a bit of a sore throat. I'm also gonna pretend like I'm not at all distracted by the crazy fucking hype that episode 1 instilled in me. And that opening, oh my god, it flows so nicely, I love it. I've watched it like 27 times. Okay, I'm already off topic, let's hop to it. We open over black with the sound of a motorcycle driving in the background, which quickly makes way for the sounds of RWBY and Yang sparring as we transition to a small wooded clearing, likely somewhere in Patch. There's log benches surrounding the area, so it's probably a campsite. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a regular training location for Yang, Tai, and RWBY. However, in Volume 4, Yang and Tai spar right outside their home, which makes sense. It would be out of character for Tai to hear about the Grim attack and still consider the campsite a safe training ground. Anyway, RWBY gets pounded into the dirt, and Yang tells her she could have dodged that. She seems like she's having fun beating the crap out of her sister, but you can still really tell she wants the best for her. RWBY tells us what we already know, that she sucks absolute dick at hand-to-hand combat, and swoons over Crescent Rose again. Now nostalgic. The little thought bubble that appears feels very appropriate since this is taking place before Volume 1. And back then, the show would pull anime-style comedic stuff like that all the time. I'll also mention that the Crescent Rose that appears in her thought bubble is the chibi version. Yang explains that she's training RWBY because she won't have time once she's off at Beacon, putting this trailer in continuity with everything else and giving us some context for her little freakout when she found out RWBY was going to Beacon with her. RWBY begrudgingly agrees to continue sparring, and so they do, Yang clearly having a blast. She seems like she's going a little easy on her sister, which makes sense considering RWBY's obvious lack of skill. RWBY dashes out of the way of a punch into the bushes, apparently with a little too much force behind it, since we find out later she knocked herself out. Yang is pleasantly surprised by the dodge, but chastises her for running away from the fight. Seems consistent with her mindset that she's averse to running. However, as it turns out, she's not talking to RWBY, but instead a massive Ursa lurking in the bushes. The way she goes looking in the brush for RWBY and finds a bear instead is a bit of a callback to Volume 1. Or I guess a call forward, since this happened before it, whatever. The Ursa looks a bit strange, or at least different than the Ursas we've seen before, so maybe this is a different kind, or maybe it's just the new aesthetic they're going for with Volume 4 and beyond. An epic fight between Goldilocks and Papa Bear ensues, in which she blasts it with those firework-style explosive rounds we saw back in the Yellow trailer. Add that to the list of sentences I never thought I'd say. I like that they pay special attention to showing you that the explosiveness of her ammo doesn't come from the rounds, but instead from these different firing modes that she shifts Ember Celica into. And you know what, this fight scene is legitimately gorgeous and well choreographed as fuck. Normally fights between huntsmen and giant monsters don't really have the same level of intricacy and cleverness, since the monsters are generally slow, untrained, and make use of a lot of massive, sweeping attacks. But the animators made it work by adding a level of intelligence to Yang's movement, and the actual animations on the punches, kicks, and swipes are excellent. As a result, this fight is fucking amazing, and I wish it had lasted longer. However, even though Yang seems to be kicking the shit out of it, the Grim eventually lands a hit, and it's apparently strong enough to send her sliding through the soil and knock several trees over. RWBY wakes up and discovers that there's a Grim attacking, even though it was previously focused on Yang, and immediately shifts its attention to RWBY, who's reasonably frightened. I wonder if the reason it's attracted to her and the reason it showed up in the first place is RWBY's unhappiness during the fight. She's clearly reluctant to be training, and Yang did just remind her that she's leaving for Beacon soon. Anyway, the Ursa charges RWBY, and Yang makes the interesting choice to take the hit for her, even though RWBY's aura probably isn't anywhere near as close to broken as hers, unless they've been training for a lot longer than I think. Of course, Yang's aura is probably stronger, and this is also just Yang looking out for her little sister. Anyway, Yang's aura breaks, and as always, things look bad until her semblance lights up and she flies back at the Ursa. This next moment is so fucking anime. She punches the Ursa in the hand so hard that it blasts the entire area with an extremely strong wind. It's such a fierce gale that RWBY has to jump back and steady herself with a superhero landing. It breaks the Ursa's arm, it instantly evaporates into nothing, and Yang flies several yards into a tree from her own momentum. All that from RWBY, logically concerned about her sister, runs over to her and, finding her intact, apologizes for not being able to help without her scythe. But Yang doesn't use it as an opportunity to say, "That's why you gotta learn to fight hand to hand." Instead, she comforts her sister, telling her that she'll always have her back. And it's this moment that we discover that this was a flashback as Yang continues forward on her bike, grimacing with determination. This moment is fairly telling. For one thing, the direct cut between flashback Yang and the current Yang made me realize that her hair back before Volume 1 is actually much brighter in color than her hair nowadays, despite both of them being shown in similar lighting and environments. The golden hair seems to have lost its luster, which makes sense given that she's now plagued by PTSD and her missing arm. Secondly, just as was the case with the previous two character shorts, the context of when Yang is having the flashback is important to the trailer's overall meaning. Yang is looking back on a moment in which she had Ruby's back and told her so, remembering what she was like before the events of Volume 3. Caring, supportive, always looking out for people that aren't her. But after she lost her arm and fell into depression, it was impossible for her to do that. Now, as a part of her journey on the road to recovery, she's searching for her mother instead of Ruby, which I used to think was out of character for her, but I think it actually makes quite a bit of sense. She's recovering. She has to worry about herself, and the way she angrily presses onward as though she's trying to shake the memory off is a bit of an insight to her current mindset. Right now, I need to focus on me, and that means finding Mom. Ruby will be okay on her own. God, I love Yang. And that is the end of this little trailer analysis journey I took. Thank you all for joining me. Now I am finished covering RWBY until Volume 5 is over. But until then, I'd suggest sticking around. I've got some pretty cool projects that need a bit more time in the oven before they're ready to eat, but when they do come out, you'll want to see them. Probably. I hope. Probably not, actually. Man, I really do sound like Crow. If I was one of your men, I'd shoot myself.